Acknowledge the advantages that you have and use them to restore equity wherever you see bias. You are not powerless against institutional bias or unconscious bias. You have power to make a difference in this world.
Welcome back. This is episode 15 of the Randy Wilson Podcast. I'm your host, Randy Wilson. This podcast will be brought to you today on all podcast channels, Google Play, Stitcher, iTunes, SoundCloud, Spotify. However, we really encourage you right now, if you're listening to this podcast, make a note to go check it out on YouTube, because then you'll get a chance to see the visual of this podcast. This is a full motion media product curated by Derek Wright. If you're looking for video, I suggest you go contact Full Motion Media. If this is your first time checking into the podcast, I would like you to pick up your cell phone and go subscribe right now. Subscribe to the Randy Wilson Podcast on all podcast channels. And you can follow me on Instagram at rwilsonpodcast. And just a little news coming, I have a website that's going to be dropping in November where you're going to be able to also catch all of these episodes. I realized with the people that I want to talk to, they got websites, and I was originally advised use your Facebook, use your social media. I was like, okay, nah. With the momentum that we're developing, with the NPR stations that we're talking to, we're going to definitely have to put out that website. So that's coming. Today we have Black excellence at its best. All right, today's guest is Dr. Tiffany Jana. Dr. Jana has helped orchestrate TMI's growth over the past 16 years. This includes leading the merger of 3 companies that resulted in the launch of TMI in 2010. Dr. Jana subsequently established a national network of consultants and spearheaded the company's transition into the world's first certified benefit corporation. With a diversity and engagement focus, Dr. Jana has positioned TMI portfolio as a global leader in metrics-based engagement. Dr. Jana has been featured in numerous publications and media, including Fast Company, Inc.com, and Forbes, for their own diversity, equity, empowerment, and inclusion. As the founder of TMI's portfolio of companies, Dr. Jana oversees the development of the firm's strategies, client relationships, and people. Dr. Jana serves as a strategic advisor on client engagement and has deep expertise in diversity and inclusion, using metrics to gauge organizational equity and unconscious bias. Dr. Jana's vision to help clients optimize their workplace and community environments is based on stated values. So with no further ado, Dr. Jana, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Having me. It's exciting.
Yes.
Glad I finally made it.
I'm glad you did too, because I know in the beginning when we talked about it, you gave me a hard time. I wasn't ready for you. I knew that we had to have all the lights to do it right. So we moved off the couch, even though we're doing a little bit of recording on the couch, audio stuff, but I just figured for the audience that I needed to receive, we definitely had to find a space, and this is literally in my backyard.
Awesome.
So I feel like it's right beside a dentist office called Heavenly Hands.
Okay.
I feel like it was a gift from God.
I love it.
Dr. Jana, you've been recognized in a lot of places. We mentioned some of them in the intro. Inc.com 2018 Top Leadership Speaker, Enterprising Women of the Year Award 2017, Style Weekly Top 40 Under 40, Diversity Journal 2013 Women Worth Watching, Entrepreneur of the Year with the Metropolitan Business League. Like, you've done a lot. Your professional background is very thorough, and it appears to me that you're really enjoying your life, traveling around the country, speaking to thousands of people on your platform. What do you enjoy the most right now about your professional life?
Well, I mean, I definitely love the travel, and I get to travel internationally as well. And having been raised in part overseas, the ability to track this work and affect a change in people's lives literally around the world is incredibly rewarding. And right now, I think what is most engaging for me is the fact that the lexicon of my trade has become part of the common vernacular. 5 or 6 years ago, when I told people what I did, they had no idea what I was talking about. Mm-hmm. And now, things like unconscious bias, diversity and inclusion, representation is part of the conversation that everybody's having. So the successes that I've enjoyed have been as much a function of sticking in there for the duration. I've just been here for a long time.
Yeah. I mean, clearly though, you were a visionary, because I recall as we shared before the podcast, seeing you speak on some of the same things over 10 years ago. I don't just
Yeah.
probably at least 10, 12 years ago. And so you was a visionary. Most successful people have the ability to project and analyze what's coming next. And so, I mean, you've obviously been very successful at that. Are you doing all the things right now in your career that you want to do?
Actually, no. I'm looking at expanding. So I was excited to hear about your website that's getting ready to launch.
Thank you.
I'm also going to do the same thing. When I first started working for myself 16 years ago, I was integrated as a brand. The only way I could figure out how to brand everything that I did was to brand myself. And so TiffanyJana.com was a thing, and it just listed everything I did. And that slowly one of those tracks took off, and it was the diversity track. I went that way, and then I became inextricably linked with my company. I became the business, which now is a little bit problematic because I feel like so much more. So I'm going back to my origins. I'm going to launch a website that will be TiffanyJana.com again, and will include a much more broad sort of kaleidoscope of who I am and what I'm interested in. Because I used to believe in my 20s that my artist self and my corporate self could not coexist. And for that season, maybe they couldn't, but now they can.
Yeah, I'm actually probably currently struggling with that right now in my life. Part of the reason why I had to get into podcasting, I needed it as a therapeutic outlet for myself, honestly, in getting away from the mental health. I thought, in dealing with people who have extremely difficult issues, I have a lot of experience having very difficult conversations, and now I'm intrigued more in having those very difficult conversations with just very competent, strong-minded people. So, I know there's going to be a lot for me and the audience to gain from this podcast today, just in regard to your journey. Can you give us a little bit about the journey? Help the audience. First off, I'm glad to have you as a guest. I have not had a lot of female guests, and I really need to expand my demographic, and I believe that our conversation today will. So can you give people who's listening, primarily men, but we're trying to open up, we need you guys to share, can you give them a little bit about your background, your life? What helped pave the way to you becoming who you are?
Yeah, well, I found myself in the situation that a lot of people do, in as much as I was employed by other people, and specifically, I found myself sort of dissatisfied with, kind of the breadth of what was available within a workplace context. And the final straw for me was, on multiple occasions with multiple organizations, I felt like I was expected to violate my own values in service of somebody else's bottom line. And even as a single mother with 2 children, when that was my option, I'd rather my children and I eat ramen for a period of time and be like, we at times lived below the poverty line, then compromise my own values.
Yes.
And so I walked away from situations that I was not okay with. And what I found is when you find yourself like way down at the bottom, the only options that you really have are up. I mean, you can stay there or you can climb. Yeah. And so I had to calibrate, who I was, what I wanted, and ultimately it was making a decision around my values and my priorities. And at the time it was my children. I had been a stay-at-home mother for years before my first divorce, and I found myself, a single mom with, at the time I hadn't finished my degree. I stopped my degree to go have children, so I was on an accelerated path to do really well and go really far. And one semester shy of graduating, I decided to run off and go make babies and have a husband. And that was after starting I started college at 15, so I was expected to be ahead of the curve.
You started college at 15.
I did start college at 15.
You was a real nerd.
I was a super nerd.
Wow.
Super nerd. Oh, yeah.
That's impressive.
I'm a super nerd. But, and then honestly, my undergraduate degree was, all right, wait for it. It was 10 years, 5 universities, 11 majors, and 3 minors to finish my undergraduate degree. The only one I finished on time was my master's in the middle, 2 years, and then it took me 8 to finish my doctorate. I just never stopped moving. But I finished it. But at the end of the day, I started my company because I had been a stay-at-home mom, and my first commitment was my children. I needed them to be okay. And in order to do that, in the early business life, my ex-husband and I had shared custody, and they were gone every other week. And nobody wanted to hire me every other week because I was like, no, I need to be class mom. I need to be on a field trip. So this traditional stuff wasn't going to work. So I had to create, one, a workplace that I wanted to work in where I could live my values and not compromise anybody else's. And 2, to be able to live the lifestyle I wanted and be there for my children. And that meant working for myself.
I believe this podcast is going to be very inspirational for all people, but particularly women, because you're as strong as they come, and I think you clearly have a story. You know, you have a you've went through your pathway, your bridges, your tunnels to get to where you are, and I'm hopeful today that there's some young women out there, particularly, that can see you as a model and as an example for that. You've written or co-authored a part of 3 books. Four, actually, four books. One of the most recent one that's been published is right here in front of us. Is that Erasing Institutional Bias, and this book has a specific emphasis on creating systematic change for organizational inclusion. Tell us a little bit about the book, particularly to the audience who may not be familiar with it, and where they can buy it at.
Yeah, so the Erasing Institutional Bias is actually the sequel to my first book, so it's my second book. My first one was Overcoming Bias, and that was an independent study in identifying your own unconscious bias and how to deal with it. And so the follow-up, Erasing Institutional Bias, if we're willing to accept that humans are biased, which we all are, then so are the institutions that we build. And sometimes, we are creating barriers to inclusion without intending to. And so what this does is it allows people within organizational context, whether you're the CEO or not, even if you're an individual contributor, it helps you identify and understand what is actually bias and what isn't within the context of an organization or a system, a community, and then helps you, actually empowers you to be able to affect change regardless of where you are within the institution. So that's, all of my books are written as like practical application tools. I love like self-help books. I love things that help me improve. I hate it when people point out a damn problem and then don't tell me what to do. They're like, everything is broken. The sky is falling. We're all going to hell in a handbasket. Congratulations. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? I'm scared now, right? Yeah. So everything I've created is designed to help people move forward. And for me, the most significant contribution of that book, of Erasing Institutional Bias, is the last 2 chapters, which include something called retribution bias. And that is the human tendency to favor punishment over rehabilitation, punishment over community. And it goes deep into the American criminal justice system and how it disproportionately affects people of color. There's a huge, big, gnarly, disgusting bias built right into our criminal justice system. And because we think someone's a bad guy or they did something wrong, we're happy to allow just criminal acts and, just abject behavior and horrible, inhumane things to happen to our fellow man and woman and gender nonconforming folks because we can't see it, because we're, undereducated and underexposed. So the idea was to expose some of that and empower people to do something about it.
You've definitely done a good job at that. Tell everyone where they can find that book.
So all of my books are available everywhere books are sold. That makes me so happy. So Barrett Kohler, BK Publishers, is my publisher, and we're distributed by Penguin Random House, which is the largest distributor in the world. So you can go to Barnes & Noble. If it's not on the shelf, you can ask for it. But any bookstore, independent or otherwise, Amazon, Google, you can get it everywhere.
Reference to publishing company again?
Barrett Kohler Publishers.
So I have a question. Because you're an author and obviously you have a publishing company behind you, does that also contribute to how you get these speaking engagements?
Indirectly, yes. So Barrett Kohler doesn't book anything for me. I like Barrett Kohler because they're also a B Corp, so they're a social justice-minded publishing firm that's here to make the world a better place. Being a published author, a commercially published author, helps me get the speaking engagement. So when people, I've rendered myself highly Googleable. Yeah. So when people look up diversity, they look up unconscious bias, they look up these topics, I show up. Yeah. And then when you show up with books behind you, it's a value add. So when I go, I get to sell books and autograph them, and it adds to the experience.
When you sit down to write a book, do you sit down and actually write, or do you speak into like an audio recorder?
No, I write on my computer.
Yeah, real artist here.
I've never really, I'm trying to embrace this idea of being a real artist, but I never set out to be an author. So in many ways, I feel guilty for taking author slot from someone who really, that's all they ever wanted to do. Yeah. I actually am a vessel. I channel. I will write whole paragraphs in my passages in my chapters, and a word will come up in the paragraph, and I'll be like, I'll have no idea what that word means. I will go look it up, and it will be a real word in context, but I am a human person occupying, a spirit occupying a body. And I believe that much of what is coming through me is being channeled.
Yeah, I can see that.
I don't sit and think about it.
I can see that. I think that, one of the things I've spoke about a lot is that we all have to embrace that, regardless if we want to accept it or not, we're all artists because we're creating life every day.
Exactly.
We have to accept it. And we get bogged down and fall into this institutional mindset when we think that we're just employees. I made a post on LinkedIn the other day, and it wasn't mine. I read it somewhere, but it was something about there's no bad jobs or bad roles in working. It's just people who feel bad about themselves.
Ooh, I like that.
In whatever it is they're doing,
Yeah.
and they don't change it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I always, when I do a lot of like mentoring and counseling of folks who are trying to find their way in the workplace, or, discover parts of themselves and how to show up in the world. And that's particularly with young folks. I find with the younger generations, I find myself having to kind of repeat this mantra that, every step on your journey is important. Like I learned more from bad bosses than I did from good bosses. I learned more from like jobs that were mundane and repetitive and did nothing to, on the surface contribute to my, my intelligence or my scholarly persona or whatever. They were just like, I was like the manager of roly-poly sandwiches. On 9/11, that's where I was. I opened roly-polies and I was putting little pieces of thin paper in a little red basket 100 times, right? And I found the zen in those moments because it's every single job I've ever had contributed to how I understand building a workplace and building structure and support for other people and how I want to relate in the marketplace. Just learn, be the best that you can in those spaces, and you never know like who you worked with or who, whose proximity you were in or what system you were in. Like people grow, people change, people expand. It might be, the little snot-nosed kid who came up behind you who was rolling the next sandwich who ends up being like the next techpreneur and giving you an opportunity you can't even believe. So I tell people, always do your best. Like show up and give 100%. I don't care if you're rolling a sandwich.
Yeah. Showing up's half the job.
Yeah.
Just being available, being present, being visible, letting people know that you care and you're invested. I think that a lot of times we have to pay attention to what we see just as much as what we don't see. Actually, the opposite. We have to pay attention to what we don't see.
Yes.
It's not always what you see. It's not always what you hear. Sometimes it's what you don't hear that you really need to focus on. It'll help put you in the right place. Certified B Corporation. So there's a B Corp book.
That's actually my third book. That's the most recent one that came out.
I'm not really fully... I don't really fully understand what that means.
It's complicated, so don't beat yourself up. So there's two components. So the B stands for benefit, right? There in 2000, I think it was 2007, a new economic sector was developed, and this was the benefit corporation sector. I think we now have over 30 states that have benefit corporation legislation. So two of my companies are Virginia benefit corporations. This means that we state explicitly in our articles that the business is here to provide a benefit to society and or the environment. I ain't manufacturing nothing, so it's I recycle my batteries, woo, right? So for ours is a social benefit, right? We're making the world a more equitable place. And what that does, embedding the social values into the organization's DNA, allows for a protection of the organization at its most vulnerable moment. So if you're going to liquidate the organization, you're going to be acquired or merged or whatever, they can't just obliterate your social mission because it's there. Like the company is here to make a difference, so they can't just just make it disappear. And the reason it matters is because benefit corporations are not just like the primary mandate of corporations in general is maximize shareholder value, full stop. Anything that they do has to maximize shareholder value, which allows for a whole lot of really unethical trash that happens in our capitalist system. Benefit corporations are maximizing shareholder value, environmental value, community value, employee value. We've expanded what a stakeholder is under the corporate structure. So we're organizations that are businesses that are using the power of business for good. The second component is a third-party audit. So there's a nonprofit called B Lab that actually started the benefit corporation sector. And you don't have to be both. They highly recommend it, but any organization can go online to bcorporation.net and take the B Impact Assessment. All you have to do is exceed 80 out of 200 points in the threshold, and in any configuration that works for you. Once you do that, then you have the option of being certified. That's where a fee would come in, and a fee is a sliding scale based on your annual receipts.
Okay.
And I think it's now 3 years. Your certification is for 3 years, and they're measuring your impact on the community, your governance, your impact on the environment, and then like your impact in the world.
So, name that company. It was a nonprofit.
B Lab.
So wasn't you one of the first B corporations?
I was the first benefit corporation and B Corp, certified B Corp in the diversity and inclusion
Okay,
space. So
okay.
my sector, diversity and inclusion, has no unified standards. We don't agree on the definition of diversity, and there's zero barriers to entry. So anyone can wake up in the morning and say, dun, 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 I is diversity practitioner, right? And that's usually how people come to it. It's usually, I work for a corporation, the corporation's like, oh shit, we should do something about diversity, and they find the nearest brown person or person with a assigned female at birth, right? And they make them the diversity person.
Hey, you doing that makes it reminds me that I started this. It won't work now. It will not work. Oh, it is working. You hear it?
Yeah. What is it?
I don't know. I wanted to bring sound effects.
Just do it with your mouth.
But with my phone on Do Not Disturb, it don't sound as loud. But yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
All the cool podcasts have them. I have to figure it out. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I downloaded a few
You
apps.
do that after. You do that in post. It's that guy's problem. How you doing?
So again, I'm hoping that you all learned something today about B corporations. I know that I have. You need to go check out the book. What's it called? Certified?
That is the B Corp Handbook, How to Use Business as a Force for Good. So it's the B Corp Handbook, but it's the second edition. So I was a case study in the first edition in 2014. So I was interviewed, my company was featured, and then the best-selling author of that book reached out to me a couple years ago and said, hey, do you want to help me rewrite this whole book from the perspective of diversity? I'm like, yeah, I want to help you rewrite your bestseller.
Yeah, I guess that helps you become a bestseller.
Yes. That was an instant bestseller as soon as it hit.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's extremely impressive. I don't know if I've sit down and talked with any bestsellers.
Hey.
Is your company TMI a for-profit organization?
It is. All B Corps are for profits.
Okay.
So it's for profit, but it's also for social good.
Okay.
Because I don't like chasing money. I came out of nonprofits, and like when I first started the company, people would be like, "Oh, you do diversity? It must be a nonprofit." I'm like, "No, but that doesn't mean we're evil."
Yeah.
So when I heard about the B Corp sector, I was like, "That's it. We're making a difference in the world, but I don't want to chase money. I want to be my own economic engine and do what I came here to do without having to ask anybody for anything."
A lot of people have it twisted in understanding what the difference between a for-profit and nonprofit is. Like, I work for a for-profit company, but there's a lot of nonprofits making more money than we are.
Oh, yeah.
The only reason why my company is considered a for-profit organization is because we receive in insurance dollars.
Right.
And, there's some companies out there that are making a whole lot more money. Do you work collaboratively with nonprofits? Is that a part of are you intentional with that, or?
So we do. We have worked with nonprofits, and because we're a B Corp, what we do is we do a lot of our work like on a sliding scale.
Okay.
So part of how we offer the social good is we make the work accessible to organizations that might not otherwise be able to access it.
Before this interview, we were talking about how kind of figuring out what the chemistry would be like. So you're answering questions before, because I was going to ask you, like, can the small business afford you?
Yes, and what's interesting now is that my model is like you've got a whole lot more employees than I have. What we have done is we rely very heavily on a network of 1099 consultants. So a lot of practitioners out in the field who have their own businesses and specialize in different areas. And what we do is we deploy them out in the universe to do the work. We teach them our methodology, and they go out and do it for our clients. Now, increasingly with really small organizations, what we'll do is we'll actually give that contract to a smaller organization, to a smaller contractor that knows how to do the work.
Okay.
Because we've gotten
That's giving back for sure.
Yeah, we've kind of gotten to a size where we need to be working we're optimized. Like metrics is one of the things that we do, and it's hard to do metrics with an organization that has less than 20 people, right, or sometimes less than 50 people.
Yeah.
It's harder to do, but that's the differentiator with my diversity firm is that we don't just throw training at people and hope it works out and guess. We actually deploy assessments that give us, really help us pinpoint where are the troubles so that we can have, very clear diversity ROI. I'm a CEO. I want to know where my money's going and what I'm getting for it. And so that's what we're calibrating for people so that we don't waste time or money or any other resources.
Got you. Are you intentional with giving back?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any specific organizations that you like to give to, or is it just?
So I actually spread it all around because I can't pick with one organization. So I mean, there's organizations in Richmond, there's organizations nationally, but we kind of do all kinds of things, and then we also empower our employees, whatever our employees are passionate about. So we pay people to volunteer every year, so because we want to encourage that. And then if our organization, our employees are associated with organizations that they're passionate about, we'll do matching with those organizations as well.
I would imagine that growing up, you like psychology.
My mother is a psychologist, a behavioral psychologist, and
Yeah.
she's why I'm in the work.
Yeah, I knew there had to be something because I mean, with what your focus is, it's very much a part of what my day to day life is,
Yeah.
and I don't know how much emphasis you've put in working with mental health organizations or not. I just know that right now more than ever, there's clearly a need for outcomes to be shown, metrics to be all of that, and with diversity inclusion is critical, as you talked about in the beginning. Even the institution of mental health sometimes in a lot of ways I could say more than sometimes, but I'll just say sometimes. I can almost say all the time.
Yeah.
It's a issue when a recipient of services is receiving service from someone who has no cultural ethnic connection to
Absolutely.
understanding the foundation of the issues.
Yeah.
And I could go on and on about that. I probably shouldn't.
Well, I see that in nonprofits all the time. Any kind of service provider that works within communities that are marginalized in any way, it's really common. It is particularly endemic in the communities where people are like, it's nonprofits and people that are serving marginalized communities, because folks are often paid less to do that work. We don't value mental health work. We don't value, the volunteerism, the support, being in the community, and particularly helping communities of color and marginalized communities. We don't value that in our culture. So we undercompensate people to do that work, which means the only people who can do that work and also have a good quality of life tend to be affluent white people, tend to be, white women is like the big demographic you get a lot, right? And so what happens is you've got these, do-gooders, more power to you, thank you for wanting to help communities, but they don't align with the people that they're serving, and it's hard to establish trust. It's hard to relate, to build a rapport across those differences, but we see that all the time.
I think it's amazing sometimes when I see, like, when you see people adopt Madonna, for example, or I don't watch TV much at all, so I can't really reference people well, but there was the couple, they divorced.
Angelina Jolie.
Yeah, like, so what's your take on this? Because my
Cross-racial
brother,
adoption.
yeah, it's like I think it's amazing that when that happens, they're able to give opportunities to kids that maybe they would have never received. And so you dress them in clothes that meets their ethnic background or whatever. You take them to places, you take them to the culture. But do you feel like do you think there's even more detrimental consequences that come from that long term? Do you think the children can go look back and resent any of the things that they went through?
So I know folks on all sides of this equation, and this is one of the wonderful things about, what God has given me in terms of exposure and access. So I know the children, I know the parents, I know the adult grown children on all sides of this. And what I would say is, like, one, there is no single answer for this. It all depends on, it starts with the mindset of the parents, the adoptive parents. In 2019, if you are a white person and you are not doing deep and meaningful work in the race space on expanding your awareness and your cultural fluency, then you are a problematic person. Like Ibram X. Kendi said it best in How to Be an Anti-Racist, his newest book. The opposite of racist is not racist, it's anti-racist. And in order to be an anti-racist, you have to actively support anti-racist policies and actively nurture anti-racist attitudes, which for white people in America means you have to do work, because our default culture is very racist. And to ignore it and to be colorblind and to not see this and not see that just means that you're a racist and you may not realize it. You might be an accidental racist, but you're still a racist. Yeah. So if you are a white person or a person who is not of color and you are adopting transracially, you have an even greater responsibility to give yourself as much cultural fluency as you can, and you have an extraordinary responsibility to that child to help them understand who they are, to expose them to people like them, to find role models for them, and to not avoid the conversation around race. Like, one of the biggest detriments that white people are engaging in, one of the biggest failures is basically the replication of what we've done with our American educational system. We're not going to talk about race because the children are innocent and we want to maintain their innocence. That's trash. Our culture will turn your white baby into a racist by default. Yes. And our culture will turn your black baby into someone who hates themselves by default. We have to be having these conversations, and you can't have them well if you are not educating yourself.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, and I made a post about this a long time ago. I think when I going to kindergarten, the first time you get into the education space, that was the first time that I recognized that, oh, they see me different. Because my life up to that point, and at least this is how I think back on it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm black. I was raised black. I look black. Black family, black neighborhood. It's not until I started coming around white people and I recognized, oh, okay, oh, I'm different.
Mine was so opposite. I had
Really?
a very different experience. So I was raised around black people, but for some reason, I don't know if it was because of, I guess I was educated around white people until I came to Richmond 26 years ago. I went to Virginia Union when I transferred, and that was my first time really around black people in large quantities. And for me, I didn't find out until 1996 that I was black. Of course, I knew I was black. My parents were black. It was like an objective reality.
Yeah.
But when I'm walking down the institutions, the hallways of institutions, and I sound like this, right? And no one ever really made a thing of my color. It wasn't until I was in a black context that I understood. Like, for instance, Union was the first time in my educational career that an instructor, an educator, expected me to be a high performer, expected me to be intelligent. It wasn't until I had that experience that I realized that every other teacher I'd had in the history of my education, except for my third grade teacher, Kathy Hamilton, black woman, love her, she's still my auntie, everyone else expected me to be the lowest performer. I would quickly prove myself to be the highest performer, but I had to prove myself.
Yeah, I believe I read that in one of your books.
Yeah. So it wasn't until I had the opposite experience. So I was not aware of my own negritude, it's a weird way to describe it, but I would say that what my parents did was they didn't handicap me with my negritude. I was aware of it, but they didn't make a thing out of it. I say I was raised like a middle-class white girl, actually like a middle-class white boy. Because like all my friends from high school and middle school work for Goldman Sachs. They're millionaires. They're doing great.
Yeah.
My parents said, this is America. We have given you the best education that we can afford. Now get out there and do whatever you want. You can be anything. And I believed them.
Did that time of your, I don't know at what point you identified yourself non-binary, but I'm questioning, did that time of your life play a contributing factor to, because you specifically said they.
Yeah.
And
so my mother's a behavioral psychologist, child psychology is her jam, and then my dad's a pediatrician. And my mother actually used to say to me when I was young that, like, as I was navigating friendships in the world and things were crazy and I was having the middle school drama, she was like, you move through the world like a boy. And she's like, that's fine. I wasn't like presenting masculine. I just, still liked the girly stuff. But I didn't want to hang out with the girls because they were full of drama that I had no interest in. I wanted to hang out with the guys and just chill, and it was just much more cool. And so as I was coming through college, she was like, you have a masculine mindset, and that's totally okay. I didn't have the non-binary language. It wasn't until I think this was like last year, maybe 2 years ago, that I started to realize. Actually, so the millennials, I feel like what they did was they put pronouns on a silver platter, and they said, what would you choose? And I'm like, oh shit, wait, I had a choice. And it was when I realized that I had a choice that I was like, whoa, I wouldn't choose she, feminine pronouns. I wouldn't choose masculine pronouns. If there's a one in the middle that's an option, that's what I would choose. And I would choose it because I feel a very strong connection to my masculine energies, to my feminine energies, and also I come from a Judeo-Christian mindset. I identify as Christian, and the idea of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit as one thing is a very easy thing for me to understand. God lives in me all the time. It is through spirit that I move. So the idea that there's a bunch of us in here doing what we do, totally easy for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I can understand that. Similar to you, now, don't get me wrong. I grew up around a lot of white people. Okay. For some black people, I can't be black. I'm not black enough.
Of course.
You know. So I'm very privileged from the experiences of growing up around. I went to college with a lot of, went all through school, because I feel like it gave me an education on behalf of how to
navigate those spaces.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And at this point in life,
advantage.
if you don't know how to do that, you're gonna struggle, because those white dollars count too, just as much as those black dollars. And in our society, unfortunately, a lot of times we're getting more dollars cross-culture than we are from our own people.
Yes. I know. That was one of the things that appealed to me about the B Corp community, was I was expecting more that economic empowerment that happens within, and I can't think of what the phrase is at this moment, cooperative economics. I was expecting more of that, and I think they're kind of leaning more in that direction. But yeah, if you are a black person and you are not spending money with black businesses, shame on you, boo-boo.
Well, I feel like
we have to do that more.
When you were young, though, and your mom said to you, you move like a boy, basically, to me, it sounds like she was saying, you're really confident, you're strong.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times women don't get that. I mean, like, they don't. A lot of times they just don't get that
Right.
that type of guidance. If you grew up with a brother,
Yeah.
he was supposed to be a certain way.
Right.
You were supposed to. Is that? Do you think
So I
that was
have
it?
two brothers, one that's 7 years older, one that's 7 years younger. And
Did you beat them up?
Did I? No, my older brother kicked my behind, and I found out much later. Like, so after my first marriage ended in domestic violence, and when I didn't tell anyone in my family. The YWCA of Richmond helped me get out, and afterwards I told my family. And when my mother told my older brother that my relationship had been violent, his first question was, "How is he?"
Yeah.
Because I know my sister's fine. And I found out that the reason that he was like kicking my ass on a regular basis was because he's like, I had to toughen you up for the world because the world is not going to be kind to you.
Yeah.
And I knew that if you were that you were trained well, you would survive. And I was like, nigga, what? You were just mean. You just sat on me because you could. I hate you. But no, I think that what my parents did is they did not discourage anything that was an authentic expression of who I was, and they didn't privilege my femininity over my fierceness, my femininity over my masculine energies. They just allowed me to be who I was.
Yeah, kudos to your parents.
Oh my God.
I guess you have a good relationship with them
Oh my
still?
God.
That's
Course.
great.
I lived in a house where my parents were everybody else's parents. Like, my mom was the school counselor at my brother's high school, not mine. My father also took on, like,
Sounds like you just skipped high school altogether.
I did it so it was like, so the way that I did it was my junior year of high school, my senior year of high school, and my freshman year of college, I did in 1 year. I didn't skip anything. I wanted to be a child psychiatrist, actually,
Okay.
and I also wanted 12 children. And so this is the planning that happens in my head. And I did the math, and I was like, in order to remain in my fertile years,
Vessel.
I would end up, right? I was like, I would end up being pregnant in my internship and residency. No one wants that. So I accelerated my program so that I could be a child psychiatrist. And I didn't skip anything. I looked at the juniors and the seniors who had these like really open schedules and they weren't showing up to school. I was like, okay, I'm going to fill out my schedule next year. I'm going to work during the summer. And every course I took was either AP or a bridge course with the university. So when I stepped on the college campus, I was 16 and a sophomore.
Wow. And that brought in all other different types of, imagine, challenges.
Oh God, I was academically ready, but I was not emotionally mature enough for that.
I was
imagine. A child on campus, and that was a hot mess.
Yeah, that's scary.
Yeah.
Let's move the conversation into bias a little bit. I'm curious of your opinion because I read it in your book. My wife forced me to grow facial hair, okay, because she told me that I was looking like a predator. She said, "You're too old to be walking around with a clean face."
Oh my God.
I've never done this in my life, okay? Now, this is like 8 months. My friends look at me like, they're probably like, man, 8 months. In 8 days, Derek can grow this on his face, okay?
Oh my God.
This is 8 months, all right? Why is it that women trust men with facial hair more than those that don't?
I couldn't tell you. I mean, personally, it reminds me of Santa Claus. I definitely have a facial hair bias. I love facial hair. But they've actually done studies, and that was in my first book, that people with facial hair are more trusted than people without it.
I don't
know what that's about.
I don't get it either.
I mean, biases come from all different places. Like, a lot of them are messages that we get from our parents. They get messages we get from family, from religious institutions, from culture in general, and then from experiences that we have.
So what do you think are common bias between men and women?
Common biases?
Yeah.
I mean, I think the first ones are around who gets to be what and who gets to do what. So I would think about, like, my own experience. I just successfully completed my third and final marriage. I have leveled up, ladies and gentlemen. I'm so excited. In the gender roles, right? So if you're in marriage, people have expectations of what is a wife, what is a husband, whose job is it to do what. That's ridiculous. If it does not require your genitalia for the action, then it should not be a gendered responsibility. Right? So we have decided, what does a leader look like? We've decided that, women are better at various things that tend to be more domestic. That's all garbage. This is all socially conditioned gender roles and expectations that are not based in any kind of reality other than expectations of days gone by. We've got to blow all that mess up and allow people to do what they want to do and be who they want to be.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to crop that bar. That'll be a good post right there. I don't know if you got a chance to see my last podcast with Enrique Pascal. Are you familiar with him? You and him would have a very interesting conversation. He also is a relationship counselor. He does a lot of marriage stuff, a lot of public speaking on what is He has a book actually. What does a real man look like?
Nice.
And we in our last conversation we talked about something similar. We had a question from the audience. You know, it was like, what does a real man look like? What does a real woman look like? Do women want men to be men when they want them to be, or when they, or do they? You know, it was a lot of good conversation. So I hope you get a chance to go check that out. Check out Enrique Pascal also, because you and him could have some good arguments, healthy arguments, very objective arguments. Yeah. What's your definition of the term privilege?
Privilege is, it's an advantage, right? It's an advantage. It's something that allows us to move through life with less friction, right? Sometimes they're unearned, sometimes they're earned, but privilege is just something that makes it easier for us to navigate life.
Do you feel that you have privilege?
A great deal. I am Dr. Tiffany Jana, right? I am taxed at a high bracket. Yep. I own multiple companies. My children are healthy and happy and ain't giving me no kind of problems, right? I don't have any family members who happen to be incarcerated. I am healthy. I am able-bodied. I have a sound mind, right? I have a good command of multiple languages. I have seen 6 continents. I will hit my 7th, Antarctica, in 2020. Thank you very much. I'm chock full of privilege. I'm also symmetrical, right? I'm a retired model. People find me attractive and therefore less threatening. They let me get away with more stuff than they do with people who are not symmetrical. I'm fair-skinned in a nation that privileges light skin and white skin. So I have inordinate amount of privilege.
So I agree with half of those.
Okay.
The other ones I don't disagree with completely. I just feel like with a lot of those things that you named, though, you earned them. So I feel like because you earned them,
they're not privileges?
I think it's different. Like,
so unearned privilege is a whole category. That is a thing. Unearned privilege is a category, and that's where the white people struggle. When they hear privilege, they run away scared because they're like, but wait, but I worked so hard, but you don't know where I came from. And that's legitimate. I don't mean to make the making fun of white people voice. I did mean to make it, but but unearned privilege is real.
Yeah.
If you just won some kind of social lottery when you woke up white, when you woke up male, when you woke up cisgender, right? You just happened to have something. You know, you woke up heterosexual. If you wake up in the club with the big numbers that makes the rules, you have an advantage that you did not earn. Now, what you do with that unearned privilege and what you do with that is what makes all the difference. And that's what determines to me whether or not you're a good person, a mediocre person, someone who is, are you here to advance the causes of those who have less privilege or not? If you're hoarding that privilege for yourself and you are, engaging in the colonizer's attitude of more for me, please and thank you, I find that problematic.
I like that. Unearned privilege versus just
privilege.
Natural
you
privilege.
can earn, and you can earn privilege. Like, Dr. Tiffany Jana is a privilege that I earned. I earned that by working really hard, and I'm still paying off them student loans, right?
Yeah.
So that is an earned privilege. However, that earned privilege comes on the heels of unearned privilege, right? So my enslaved ancestor, John Groves, got when the Union Army marched through Virginia, he got into that line, he fought. And then ultimately, that side of my family were like I don't know if you saw the movie Posse, but that's my family. They were the black pioneers who went out west, cut the roads in Colorado Springs, cut the roads up Pikes Peak that no one wanted to do because it was dangerous and scary. And my family can trace our literacy back to that plantation. We've been literate since in the days of enslavement. That changes a people. Like, we've had education, we've had access, and I'm Dr. Tiffany Jana because my family has had advanced degrees since the earliest opportunity that we had to get advanced degrees. When you see what is possible, then you can be what is possible.
Bars. You a rapper?
I should probably try because I am a poet. And when my children are in the house.
And a painter as well, right?
Who?
And a paint. Don't you paint as well?
I am.
Yep.
It's all coming back. Wait for it.
I will tell you, you enlightened me a little bit on that privilege piece. I brought it up because sometimes when I hear black people say I have black privilege in comparison to how the term white privilege is used, it's a lot of times some white people have privilege, again, unearned, just because by default. And I think it's different sometimes when black people use the term privilege. you gave a lot of good examples in regard to where you could say, yeah, it relates. But there's a lot of situations, if you're going to compare black and white, where it's completely
Incomparable.
earned.
Like what the woman who was just shot in her house. Come on.
Ridiculous.
Right? Like white people, like I still, like I'm now that I drive a Tesla Model X, right? And I have gubernatorial plates. The likelihood of me getting pulled over is minuscule. So I have a lot less anxiety now around police, but I remember in the years that I drove a regular car with a regular license plate, that like every time a cop drove by, and I haven't had a bunch of bad experiences with cops. It's just in my DNA. Like the police force in the United States comes from the slave catchers back in the day. Our modern police force started as the people who were there to catch enslaved Africans that ran away. So asking them to stop being racist and stop targeting black bodies is asking them to go counter to their original charter. Like, that's crazy. It's crazy. That's literally what has been taught through time. Yeah. So the fact that my white friends have zero anxiety when a cop passes them on the road or when they see a police officer, like, it's like they can't even imagine what that privilege is.
When I drive, like, long distances, I always try to, like, cover my arms. I'm just like, I just don't want to deal with it. I just try to make sure I'm looking as normal based off what they're looking for as possible. Because if I get pulled over looking like this, put this shirt on, young, black, and ambitious, it's crazy. It's a setup.
It's crazy. Yeah, it's problematic. Our criminal justice system is a hot mess. Like, I need to see all of my brothers and sisters who are behind bars because of marijuana need to be, re-entered into society. And I would like for them to all have first dibs on this new sector of the economy where people are making money, because who's making the money off of that industry right now? Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? And I'm so glad that America's racism is now on full display, front and center, and that there is no more avoiding the conversation, because this conversation has to be had.
Yes, very much.
And we're the laughingstock of the rest of the world. Everybody else can see it, and they're like, y'all so funny, trying to run around the world promoting democracy. It is a hot mess. Have y'all seen the 1619 Project? Mm-mm. Oh my gosh, 1619 Project, New York Times. It's like the missing piece of our education. Like, we were not educated about the truth and the reality of the enslavement of African bodies in America and the contribution that black people have made to America. Unless you went to a HBCU, you have to teach yourself. Yeah. So the New York Times went ham, and just like there's a podcast now, and they published this huge insert magazine that just tells the story. 1619 is the year that the first black bodies landed in America from a boat. There was 20 of us, and they tie every facet of what we define as America and American success can be tied back to what black people have done for this country. We are not the problem. We never have been the problem. We have always been the solution, and will continue to be the solution. 1619 Project, look it up. It's
interesting. So I will. You know what's interesting about, you reference HBCUs though, and I guess you're saying that you can receive that information if do you realize though the majority of professors in HBCUs are not black?
No.
Mine were. Fun fact. Well, I did my research on educational outcomes of blacks versus whites that graduate from HBCUs versus schools in Appalachia. Yeah. And unless something's changed in the past 15 years, which I don't think so, it was very crazy. Drastic numbers. Yeah, it's just a lot of white people.
I do know white people who work for HBCUs. Yeah, it's
a lot of them.
True.
Yeah, it's a lot of them.
But at least I say that white people who work in, and I learned this from my ex, my last husband. So many husbands, I can't keep them straight. My last husband was a whole white man. And I did learn a lot in that space, because what I learned from him was that white people, in order to be credible in the anti-racist space, have to do so much more research. Like, we're all experts in black life in America because we are walking around in this skin. Yeah. And so the white people who work at HBCUs, I guess if they're teaching math, maybe it's different, but if they're in the historical spaces and they're teaching about our stuff, they have to be super hyper informed and also really care about the cause in order to be in those spaces. I would hope that they're not under qualified and intentionally.
Do you ever go Southwest Virginia?
Give me a city.
Bristol, Abingdon, Wytheville, Galax.
Yeah, not so much.
Yeah, so I went to college out there. Okay. Golf course was in a cow pasture.
It sounds like plantations.
It's a little scary. Okay, it was definitely culture shocking, but in the research, if you graduated from a school in Southwest Virginia, East Tennessee, South Kentucky, or I guess that would be the northwestern part of North Carolina. If you was black and you graduated from a school out there, you make a lot more money because you go back to urban cities to work your way up the chain or become an entrepreneur versus whites that graduate from those schools. They go back to those rural towns and they immediately get the best paying job, but then there's no development. It just maintain. It's interesting. I can share it with you.
It's interesting.
It's old, but I can share it with you.
Hey.
I presented it in a conference, so I know that it's accurate.
Has
I try to
anybody
take.
built on it? Has anybody built on it?
Yeah, I continue to build on it through
Okay.
grad school. Now,
Nice.
what's going on now? I'm not really sure,
Yeah.
but I know when I went to an HBCU, they didn't like my.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
Yeah, so it prolonged my process at
Yeah.
Michigan State for sure. We're wrapping up here. We got about 12 minutes to go. How do you challenge yourself socially? Or is it a challenge?
I mean,
I guess more outside of the work piece. I mean personal, social.
so fun fact, I speak on stages and with groups like into the thousands of people. And I actually have a pretty significant like social anxiety. I don't like crowds. I attribute it now because I'm trying to like, if you cross over 40, like your awareness of yourself is, very acute. And I attribute it now to my sort of connectedness to energy and spirit. And whenever I'm in a space, I am energetically connecting to the people in it. I'm aware of their energies, what they're bringing, protecting myself from energies that I need to, reaching out energetically and healing in the places where I find pain, which is everywhere. And so in a very large crowd, my energy is engaging with it. I don't even have to be looking at you or talking to you, but my energy is engaging at this mass level. This is why I like the stage setup. I'm able to disperse that energy, that healing, that love. Because at the end of the day, my jam is I love me very much. Okay? I also love you very much. And my job, my gift, my anointing is helping people love each other across any divide.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say anointing because I was wondering if you considered your service a ministry.
Absolutely.
Because it sounds like you speak with conviction.
Yes.
So I'm glad to know that you do because if you didn't, who's going to make sure you knew that?
There's no way for me to escape that because what I get on an ongoing, daily, and continual basis is the testimony from people who've been affected by my words, my presence, my books, my artwork. I've had paintings save people's lives who were going to kill themselves. Like there is something about whatever the energy is that I was given is not for me. It's also not meant for one person like a husband. It's meant for me to share and offer healing to the world. So challenging myself socially is actually being out in large spaces in crowds because I need to be there. I have to be amongst people. But people would always describe me as an extrovert my whole life. But the reality is that while I do get life and get energy, because extroversion, introversion is not about where you want to be, it's about where do you get energy. Do you refuel with a crowd at a party or do you refuel alone with a book, on your couch? And increasingly, for me, the answer is solitude.
Gotcha.
I actually want to be by myself quite a lot of the time.
Gotcha. Do you use your platform to do you use your platform in anything to address like political agenda?
No.
No. You're completely non-political.
I'm
I
not.
meant you're pro-business.
I'm not non-political. I think that our system of politics is bullshit, and I don't support it. I think the two-party system is trash. I think that everything about our political system was designed to hold people back, keep people down, and enrich a small select few. So I struggle with politics. So I don't play into that game. That's one of the systems that's used to keep us in subjugation, to keep our minds controlled, and to keep us from challenging it.
Yeah, I'm a pro-business type of person. If it makes intelligent sense and it makes money, it makes sense to me. I guess I struggle. I think what's different for me right now than ever in my life, when I vote, I've always voted for who I believe that was the best person to fill the role.
That makes sense.
I agree also, but I'm learning.
Increasingly,
I think it struggles now though. It's like because if you don't pick a side, then you know that wholehearted, conscious, wholesome decision that you made because that person's the best candidate. Basically, it fucks you.
Yeah.
Because that side never wins in politics. That's
why I don't like it. Do I vote? Yes, because people suffered and died so that I could vote. So I do vote. But I am deeply troubled. I'm deeply troubled by our criminal justice system. I'm deeply troubled by our political system. I'm deeply troubled by our economic system. I am deeply troubled at the way that the world is oriented, because it's like there is nothing about our current state of affairs worldwide that is an accident. There's nothing about the suffering of humanity around the world that is an accident. It has all been done very intentionally. We've optimized all variables to achieve these exact results. There is no accident here, and it will take every bit as much intentionality to correct it as it did to create it.
Yeah.
Anybody who thinks that it's, how did this happen? Oh, well, on purpose, with design.
We're going to put you in the pulpit, okay?
Okay.
We're going to get you a cake.
I've actually preached before.
You sound like it.
I've preached. It was nice.
Sound like it. Do you preach to your kids?
Oh, gosh. I preach to anybody who will listen. Don't ask. If you ask me for a word, it's coming.
Okay. So, hey, we're wrapping up here. We got like 5 minutes, and we're going to keep it Richmond-based, okay? Right. As you all see, we're in the city of Richmond. You've been here, you said 26 years?
26 years.
It's 26 years. Do you have any local musical acts? I have a lot of artists that follow me. I'm really engaged in the art community. Do you have any local music acts that you like to support?
Butcher Brown. Love Butcher Brown.
Butcher Brown, I'm not familiar, but I'm going to find it. We'll try to hashtag that. We want to give shout outs.
Awesome.
So, Butcher Brown, what kind of music is that?
Like jazz, funk.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anyone else?
Sam Reed, the singer Sam Reed.
I'm familiar with Sam Reed.
She's amazing.
Yeah. Any local Richmond venues that you like to go listen to music?
I like everything. Things center around the Vagabond. Like I love the Vagabond, the Rabbit Hole. Butcher Brown plays there a lot. I do end up going to the National quite a bit. I don't know who owns it, but there is a lot going on there. Art of Noise.
Yeah. I've never been to the Art of Noise.
You've never been to the Art of Noise? That is like, my daughter hates that I call it a dance party, but that's my favorite dance party. I'm so old. But yeah, it's Mad Skills and DJ Lonnie B.
Yeah, shout out to them. And I'm familiar with it. I mean, all my friends have gone. I'm a festival guy.
Okay.
I love outdoors.
Okay.
For some reason, to be honest with you, like, I can be in any other city indoors, like that type of environment, and be more comfortable than being in a closed-in environment like that. First off, I don't dance, and I don't shoulder lean. I got a mad, like, good head.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like, if they did it outside or somewhere, I feel...
Also, they have done it outside. Like, they did it outside at the
Second Street
festivals.
Yeah. Mainstream artist. Is Sam Reed's a mainstream artist? Or no, local artist?
Local.
Okay, I've heard that name. Maybe
She's
I don't...
fantastic.
Okay. Any mainstream artists you like?
Any mainstream artists I like? I was just getting picked on by a friend recently. Like, my musical education is so stuck somewhere about 1992 or so.
Hey, those were the classic years.
That's where it is. But no, at the moment, so I Spotify, and right now I'm really loving Lizzo so much because it's just like this is just so body positive, and like, we need that. Like, I was a whole bulimic in my teenage years. Like, I struggled with that. I struggled with so many things. I'm like, where was that messaging? Like, I am so happy to see just body positivity, black beautiful queen doing her thing. It makes me happy.
How do you feel about the Navy Hill project? Are you a supporter? Do you think that's good?
I am for black economic empowerment. So if we are legitimately creating opportunities for African American people to gain from the upside of this thing, absolutely. And if we are legitimately creating affordable housing for people and for people of color specifically, like I'm out here like Issa Rae. I'm rooting for everybody black. Like, I racial reconciliation, it's a beautiful thing. Do love and peace to all, yes. Do I hate anybody? No. But somebody's got to be rooting for black people because we are not getting a fair shot, and that's me. I'm rooting for us.
Yes.
So as long as black people win out of this thing, I'm all for it.
Do you have an opinion about Shackle Bottom and how they can best honor the slave ground?
I mean, we have lots of examples of, like, when we're ready to honor white people, we do it really well. Like, we gotta have monuments, we gotta have plaques, we gotta have signage, we gotta have designation, we gotta have money pointing people to come to this place. We have to lift it up for the important part of our history that it is. Like, quit playing.
Yeah.
There's nothing that we're asking for that we don't know how to do in America.
Yeah.
How did we do it when it was the white people? Oh, 672,000 examples.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like even reparations. Oh, reparations is so scary. What was the GI Bill, right? What we have done, we have literally, the Homestead Act, we handed white people land. That was a form of reparations. That was a form of economic empowerment through the government. Like white people wouldn't have what they had today if the government hadn't stepped in and handed it to them. But just because it came from your great-great-great-grandpappy doesn't mean that wasn't a government intervention that gave you the wealth you have today. We know how to do this. We just don't want to do it for black people.
Just got to do it.
Lord.
You're right.
Now I'm mad. Now I'm an angry black woman.
I'm gonna cut this up though. I'm posting this. I'll post all these foods. Any local restaurant you enjoy?
Any local restaurant. So I'm vegan and gluten free, which makes life a little bit difficult. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Sadia's Juice Box.
Yeah.
I love that one.
I like that too.
I can have everything, and it is woman of color owned.
I love it. It's just when I leave out of there, my stomach is just like the ginger. I love it, but I don't always operate well after the ginger. Yeah. Probably TMI.
No, but ginger's supposed to be stomach soothing. That's really surprising. I wonder if you have some kind of allergy.
I probably
You should have one of them expensive tests that tells you all the things you're allergic to.
Yeah. Because
we do have sensitivities to weird things that we don't know about.
Yeah. So this is how I end every podcast. Okay. No chicken or fish for you.
No, fish. If it's chicken or fish, I would choose fish. I think that one day fish might come back into my diet. If it's like sustainably caught, harvested, etc. Like what I understand now is that we're overfishing. Like once you go down the rabbit hole of nutrition, you find out more than you ever wanted to know. But fish, I was never really a chicken fan.
No beef, no pork. How long have you been a vegan?
I've only been vegan almost 2 years now, but I've been gluten free for 7.
Okay. You was a military, so do you consider any place a hometown?
Richmond's grown on me like a wart. So it's here, but I'm not having it removed just yet. I actually would consider New York home.
So is there anyone that you would consider a hometown hero? Someone when you were growing up that you...
No, I'm going back to Richmond. It's Maggie Walker.
Gotcha.
It's Maggie Walker.
Okay.
I got to play Maggie Walker in a one-woman show called The Penny Executive, 23 characters in 45 minutes, my favorite stage play. Gotcha. And you want to talk about channeling? I believe that Maggie Walker gave me permission to play that role, and performing that show hundreds of times changed my life. It totally affected me.
You're probably going to have a monument one day.
You need to stop.
You probably will. I mean,
crazy person.
You put together. You played a key role in orchestrating LeVar Stoney's transition into mayor. I think people see you in a light, particularly as a black woman, that it could easily happen. Or mural. I need an artist out there right now who is really eager to just paint some blue all over a building in Richmond. You need to check out Tiffany, Jana. Last question. Last two questions. I'm gonna wrap it up. Do you like sports?
Yes, I like playing them more than I like watching them.
What do you enjoy playing?
Tennis and ski. I was a skier. Slalom and Super G downhill. Very fast.
Okay. Any celebrity crush?
Celebrity crush. Trevor Noah, Jesse Williams.
Trevor Noah.
Daily Show.
Okay.
South African cat.
Okay. Yeah, I know you're talking about. Okay.
It's so cute. It's so handsome.
Well, Dr. Jana, it's been a pleasure to have you on here. Can you give them your social media so they can learn how to find you?
So I'm Tiffany Jana on all social media except Twitter. I'm Twiffany Jana because I thought I was cute and I can't seem to get rid of it now.
Twiffany?
Twiffany.
Man. Well, it's definitely been a pleasure to have you on the Randy Wilson podcast. This podcast will be brought to you everywhere podcasts are. You answered a lot of questions in advance, so I tend to, on my side, I feel like it flowed very well.
Yeah,
I hope that you thought so as well. And the value of podcast is we come together, we talk, we got to push the product. You've shared so many things today that we need to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to receive. So I hope that as we cut this up, that you're willing to share and push it, and maybe it can get to someone who really needs it.
Awesome. That's what I'm here to do.
Thank you very much. This is episode 15 of the Randy Wilson podcast. This is the last episode in season 1. Coming to you season 2 in a few weeks. So anticipate some changes, and we'll talk to you then. Thank you.